Hi everyone, my name is Riccardo Retez, and with my colleague Luca Miranda, we are going to explore a particular kind of relationship between the player and the avatar in a recent video game experience. This research investigates the role of the player within the ecosystem of Watch Dogs Legion, a video game published by the French video game company Ubisoft Entertainment in 2020. The study involves the analysis of the role of the player according to a multiple configuration, as Patient Zero, Parasite, and Epidemic agent. The role of the player is potentially expressed through its being a starting point of contagion, a parasite that raids the bodies of non-playable characters, and an epidemic agent, a potentially uncontrolled transmission medium. To understand this relationship, it is necessary to acknowledge the narrative context in which Watch Dogs Legion is set. A quick look at the recent video game market shows that dystopian settings dominate the video game landscape. Not surprisingly, Watch Dogs Legion takes place in a carefully reconstructed future London, built up as a hubristic surveillance state. In this totalitarian city, all police forces have been replaced with a private military surveillance organization. The player takes part in an anti-corporate hacking collective, which aims to overthrow the military state. London is framed as a surveillance nightmare, an Orwellian vision of dystopia that prizes obedience, conformity, and social homologation. On a gameplay level, Watch Dogs Legion is de facto an open-world game, which normally means that the player controls a single avatar, tackling the interactive story by exploring the virtual world in a non-set-on-track manner. Watch Dogs Legion populates its world with over 9 million playable characters. The player can explore the dystopian London and, with the press of a button, switch perspectives to inhabit the body of a spy, a construction worker, or an average Joe.
Watch Dogs Legion changes the notion of non-playable character by making each and every person in the game playable. Non-playable characters are characters within a computer game that are controlled by the computer rather than the player, whose genealogy extends back to pre-digital role-playing games. Since in Watch Dogs Legion every non-playable character is controllable, the traditional figure of the avatar falters. In Watch Dogs Legion, the avatar is no longer a chosen one or an operational tool, but is transformed into an inhabited and possessed entity beyond the limits of a framed virtual world. Game designers can generate believable non-playable characters that persuade the player to enter a state of presence, and this is relevant for what concerns the embodiment of the player in his active role in Watch Dogs Legion. Embodiment is a process by which the game has an active role in harnessing the affectivity of the player and using it to take control of the human body and the physical space it inhabits. Furthermore, the player is pushed to become the central agent in the system and exercises control on what is happening. The virtual character becomes the player's surrogate mind and body, and the player can attribute both mental and physical states to it in his own terms. In Watch Dogs Legion, player, avatar, and non-playable characters can be seen as a collectivity, a total body, a collectivized corporeality surrogated for and through the performance of the player.
The expressions of embodiment mentioned above can be traced to different forms of contagion and epidemic transmission capable of further redefining the role of the player in his relationship with the network of non-playable characters. In the ludic and narrative context of Watch Dogs Legion, the term Patient Zero is easily associated with the first game avatar, with whom the player starts to know the virtual world and to experience it. As an agent, the player chooses his first host, and, with the narrative aim of creating a network of anti-totalitarian revolutionaries, he spreads the social contagion. In the case of Watch Dogs Legion, the dominant theme is the loss of individual selfhood. The player also performs an act of parasitism, since the infection process produces an over-dispersed distribution of parasites within the host population. All this means that the player accepts to play inside the body of a non-playable character, exploiting their game skills for narrative and ludic purposes. As Patient Zero, Parasite, and Epidemic agent, the player exercises a form of control over the game world, trying to achieve social and cultural homologation in order to fight the predisposed dystopian homologation.
The dystopian setting of Watch Dogs Legion, the role of the player, and the ontology of the non-playable characters are bound together into an homologative dynamic. As debated above, we can state that the narrative of the player set throughout an homologative agency on the virtual world and characters as a total body plays a part in structuring the role of the player in multiple facets. On the narrative end, as a Patient Zero, Parasite, and Epidemic agent, the player both generates and fights a process of homologation, exploiting the non-playable characters in order to create kindred avatars and tackle totalitarianism. Also, on the non-diegetic end, the player, with his in-game actions, imposes a propagating form of homologation with his political and social behaviors throughout the game world character identities. Thank you very much for your attention.